Hey guys, welcome to my channel and welcome to today's video. Today we are going to be doing just a sit-down chat going over several of the Anastasia Beverly Hills palettes. I don't own every single palette that she's come out with, obviously, but I do own 6 of them. So I do want to go over and discuss my thoughts and opinions on each of these palettes. I'm going to try to insert swatches for you somewhere in the video of each palette. And I also created an entire spreadsheet comparing the different shades in each palette and which ones are repeats and which ones you can find as singles. Just the whole thing. So this is gonna be just a chat, like I said. So if you want to hear my thoughts and my research on these palettes, then just keep watching. Alright, so I'm going to start with, I'm not really going to go in any particular order. I have them in a certain order on my spreadsheet, which I'm going to try to insert as I'm talking about things, so you guys can see what I came up with as well. So basically what I did was I listed all the palettes, every shade that's in the palettes, and I also went through and listed every single eyeshadow that you can buy from Anastasia Beverly Hills. The main reason I wanted to do this was because I had heard some controversy that there were shades that were repeats in her palettes, as well as I noticed a few myself just between the Soft Glam and Modern Renaissance palettes. So I wanted to really sit down and get like an overview and see it laid out in front of me on which shades are repeats. And right off the bat, I'm going to tell you that these two, Soft Glam and Modern Renaissance, are the worst as far as repeats go. And it's kind of funny because I really enjoy both of these, maybe because they do have, maybe it's because they're her popular shades that are in these. So that is one thing that I noticed with those two. A couple of the others do have like a repeating single shade here and there, but I will say, like I said, that these two are the worst. And I think what bothers me about the fact that she puts single shadows into her palettes is that for those of you who may already have a bunch of her singles and then she comes out with a palette, you think you want it and then you buy it and you're like, wait a minute, I already have several of these in a single. Because I've had these palettes, and not that long ago I bought some singles before I went through and looked at what the repeats were, and I did accidentally buy a single in a shade that I already had in one of the palettes. Because I don't memorize shade names, so how would I know that just going to the store and picking up a couple singles, you know? So I'm not necessarily saying this is like, don't buy her palettes just because she puts singles in it. Personally, I don't usually buy single shadows, so for me it's not that big of a deal. But for those of you that do buy singles, I just want you to be aware that there are several that repeat. So first I'm going to show you guys Modern Renaissance. This is what it looks like on the inside. I'm sure you guys have seen it hundreds of times at this point. This is not a brand new palette. This was the first Anastasia palette that I got, and I really did enjoy it. It's not shades that I wear, every single day, but I definitely have used this and I do enjoy it. Now I will say that, let's see, 8 of the 14 shades are either in another palette or are singles. Majority of them are just singles and not in other palettes, but that is over half of the palette that is not unique to this palette. The other 6 shades obviously are just unique to this palette, so I just want to point that out. The next one we have is Soft Glam. I believe this was the second palette I got from Anastasia. I ended up acquiring all of these in a very short span of time once I got this one. So this is Soft Glam. There are a couple shades that repeat in this one that are in Modern Renaissance, so you probably don't necessarily need both, but I mean, as you see, there definitely are differences in the two. Even though there are, looks like there's 2 shades that repeat, and it's Tempera and Cypress Umber. Hold on. So, Tempera and Cypress Umber. Those 2 shades are also in Modern Renaissance, also, sorry, I'm looking at my spreadsheet and I'm getting a little thrown off. Burnt Orange is also in Modern Renaissance, as well as it's a single shadow. So, and Noir, that shade is a repeat. you know, they have Noir and Sultry, and then there's another shade from the Prism palette that they named differently, but it's still black. So I would consider that almost like a repeat. It's not the same name. I really do like the Soft Glam palette. This one is great for creating those everyday looks. It's so easy to work with. I really do like the formula of her shadows in this one and the Modern Renaissance palettes. You do get a little bit of kick up when you use the palettes, but that personally does not bother me. I always go in pretty lightly and tap off my brush anyway, just to avoid having a ton of pigment right off the bat. But if you are bothered by kick up, you know, you may not like these palettes because there is a little bit. Next, I want to move on to Prism, which I believe this was her holiday release from last year. I ended up getting it on sale and with one of the Sephora sales, so I ended up getting it for a really good deal. But I will say that honestly, this just doesn't really do anything for me. As you see, I haven't even really dived into it that much. I've used a couple, like 1 or 2 shades from this, and it's because I don't know, I'm just not like super creative when it comes to my eye looks, so to me this is just hard to actually create looks with. But what's funny about this palette is it's actually the only palette of all of these that I'm going to mention that has no repeating shades. So I don't know if you can even still get your hands on this. It might not be available anymore. I will leave that info in the description box down below and let you guys know. But I just honestly, I just don't reach for this palette. I'm actually considering doing a declutter of all my eyeshadow palettes, and I could say that this one could definitely be on my maybe list. I do want to play with it a little bit more and see if maybe I can do something creative with it, because this shade Dimension and Throne, these are stunning shades, and I'm sure I could do something with it. I just need to step out of the box, but I will say that this is probably my least used out of all the ones that I own. So next we have Subculture. Subculture created a ton of controversy when this came out. Again, I didn't pick this up until like a while after, and I ended up getting it at Macy's during a discount. Now I will say this has way more kick up than the other palettes, and I thought, you know, maybe people were just being people were exaggerating when this first came out, but you have to go in literally with your brush and just like barely tap it. It is super pigmented and there is kick up, so that is one thing that deters me from working with this palette, just because it is a little trickier. I have used it. It's another one of those palettes that I'm just kind of like not that inspired by. It is more, I just noticed this actually, there's only 3 shimmer shades in here, so I guess if you are looking for more mattes, this would be a great palette for you, because like I said, it's only 3 shimmer out of the 14. And honestly, I really do like the green shades in this palette. Those are the ones I used when I was creating looks with this. But again, like I said, I just don't gravitate towards this one that much because, again, I'm not that creative. I'm not a professional makeup artist, so I tend to stick to colors that I know well. Now for this one, there's only one shade that repeats with a single, and that is the shade Fudge. And funny enough, Fudge is the one I ended up buying in a single shadow because I didn't realize that it was already in this palette. Which, at least it is like a nice brown shade, so it's not like I can't use it. But how often does one, you know, I have a huge collection, so it's like I don't go through eyeshadows that quickly. But yeah, so this one only has 1. Oh, and I think I might have forgotten to mention that with Soft Glam, it was 7 out of the 14 that were repeats, just in case I forgot to mention that. Next, we have the Sultry palette, which this one is my newest one, and I have to say I really love this palette. There should already be a video up on my channel using this palette for my eye look actually that I'm wearing right now. I'll throw that up in the cards for you guys. And I really do enjoy this palette. The only thing that I don't really care for is this shade, which I get it, a lot of brands put pops of color in the palette to give it a little bit more versatility, but again, since I lack in the creativity department a little bit, I just don't know what I would use that shade for with this palette. Now, those of you who are super creative, you might look at this and be like, yes, I know exactly what I want to use that shade for. But for me personally, I just don't really see myself using it. That's not to say I never will. I am trying to step out of my comfort zone more with my eye looks, so it's still there, but if I had to, I would say that shade, you don't need it. But I really do recommend this palette. I really do like it. And then lastly, we have the Norvina palette. Oh, I'm sorry. And for the Sultry, there are 2 shades that repeat. One of them is actually, both of them are singles, and one of them is in other palettes, and that's the shade Noir, as I was mentioning, which is just a black. Alright, so now moving on to Norvina. This palette, I was really, I was drawn to it because I do have a lot of her palettes, and I am a collector, so sometimes it's hard for me to say no to a palette. And I did really like the purple and pink shades in this, but honestly, when I used this, I was a little underwhelmed. That again could come from the fact that I am not super creative in my eye looks, but I do want to start playing with this one more. But again, it's not one that I would reach for all the time. I reach for the other ones more than this one. But this one only has 1 shade that repeats, and it is repeating with a single shadow. So, not too bad if you don't have the singles, then the repeating part isn't really an issue for you. This one has 7 shimmers, 7 mattes. So definitely a good number of shimmers in there. And there are some really pretty like neutral shades, some pinks, purples. I do think that this is a really gorgeous palette, and like I said, I definitely want to play with it more. So now what I want to do is I'm going to rank them in order from favorite to least favorite. Okay, so my number 1 favorite I would have to say is the Soft Glam palette. I'll show you them each one more time. I would say this is probably my most used out of all of these. Maybe Modern Renaissance is right there with it, but I will say that I do enjoy this one the most. This is my number 1 favorite. Then taking the number 2 spot recently is the Sultry palette. I am enjoying this way more than I thought I was going to. In my last video about this palette, I mentioned that I wasn't even really planning on picking it up, but when the sale came, I decided what the heck, I like the packaging, I like the colors. I've been into cool tone shadows more lately, so yes, this has definitely taken the number 2 spot in my list of favorites out of all my Anastasia palettes. Third favorite is the Modern Renaissance. This was the first Anastasia palette I ever got, and I really did enjoy it, when I first started using it, and I still do. I just have so many palettes that it's not like I reach for it all the time, but I really do like the shades in this, and I think you can create some really pretty, like date night type shades with this. You have these like pinky reds, purples. I guess they're like pinky red purples. I don't even know how you explain that, but I really do like this palette, so this is number 3. I would say these 3 are all, like yes, I'm rating them 1, 2, 3, but they're all very, very close. Like if I could only keep 3 out of the 6 that I own, it would be these 3. I would be happy with just these 3. So now my next on the list, number 4, would be the Norvina palette. Like I said, the top 3 are the ones that I love. I don't want to have to live without these. The bottom 3, could I live without? Yes. So Norvina is number 4. I do like this palette. Like I was saying earlier, it just underwhelmed me a little bit, and it's just not something that I reach for all the time. Even when I was considering getting this, I did not jump when it first released. I waited probably like a month when it finally came into stores so I could see it in person. I decided to pick it up because, again, I'm a collector, and now I'm doing videos, so I like to have these things for that purpose. And then number 5 would be Subculture. Honestly, the bottom 2, I am heavily considering decluttering. I do want to do a whole video on all my eyeshadow palettes where we can go in depth more on each of the palettes that I own and what ones I might want to get rid of, but honestly, I just don't really see myself reaching for this one that much because of how challenging I find it to work with. Is it workable? Yes. I have created looks with it. I've used it. It's fine. But is it something I want to reach for when I have like 10 other palettes that are easier to work with and I could probably find similar shades? That's the thing. But if you are a more matte shadow person, I do think this one's good because, like I was saying, it only contains 3 shimmers. So if you like the mattes, this might be a good one for you. You just have to be careful when working with it. And lastly is the Prism palette. Like I said, this palette just really, I just usually don't have any desire to reach for it, and it's sad because it is pretty, and you know, the shadow formula is good. It's just, I just don't jump for it. So this one is also on my possible declutter list, so that is number 6. So I hope that this video kind of helped you, you know, think about each of these palettes. Obviously no person needs all 6 of these, but you know, again, I'm like a broken record. I am a collector, so I do like to have, you know, I just like to collect makeup, especially eyeshadow palettes. Eyeshadow palettes are my weakness. I will use the same foundation for months and months, but I will buy like 5 palettes in that time frame. So I just love palettes because I feel like you get the most for your money that way. So yeah, and honestly the whole repeating shade things, it kind of did bother me at first when I was first doing my spreadsheet, which hopefully I will have figured out how to insert that at this point in the video so you could see. But really the main repeating problem is with the Soft Glam and Modern Renaissance. So if you have one or the other, you probably don't need both, but they do have their differences. So that's, I think that's where she gets you, you know. It's like, yes, there are some repeating shades, but there are still differences. So, you know, the repeating thing doesn't really bother me that much now that I've actually compared it on a spreadsheet, because the majority of the repeating shades are just repeats with her single shadows, which I don't really own any of her single shadows besides 4 of them, so it really just doesn't bother me that much. But taking into consideration if you do own a lot of her single shadows. So yeah guys, that completes today's video. I hope that this kind of helped you think about these palettes a little more, and I'm also going to insert the swatches of each one just so you can see it, even though I'm sure you've seen plenty of videos with swatches of all of these. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. It would mean so much to me if you do, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.
Yeah, we are in the place to be. Yeah.